Welcome to At the Kitchen Counter, where we serve up stories and insights from educators straight from my grandma's kitchen counter. I'm your host, Alyssa Fabian, also known as Farmer Fobs. This kitchen counter is not only the beholder of great conversations, but also a place where learning has taken place. My guest today is Anthony. I call you AKA Markify, right? Um, Now, most podcasts would introduce you and read your bio, but we're just here at the kitchen counter. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Anthony.
Yeah, so you're absolutely on it. I'm Mr. Markify is my secondary name, but I'm a recent graduate from high school, and so I actually graduated a few months ago. I'm 18 years old, and I'm most known for Markify, which is my ed tech tool product. It's called a whole bunch of different things, but I really started it all the way back my sophomore year of high school, and it's been a very interesting journey, especially being that I'm not an educator. I don't have an education degree. I've not taught in the classroom, but being a student in the classroom who's gone through school when technology was becoming pioneered, right? I went from not having one-to-one computers to every student having a computer to, multiple different ed tech tools being used in a single class period throughout my school career. And having that perspective, I think, really has helped me build a pretty effective collaboration tool, Markify, that really aims to improve classroom accessibility and engagement through collaboration. And it really started all the way back in that sophomore year, teachers writing notes at the front. I'm copying those notes down when all of a sudden he erased the board before I had all the notes written down. And I was just thinking, I have a computer sitting in front of me. Why can't I take the notes from the front of the room, a smart board, a tablet, and stream that to my device to see up close? And it was just going to be a simple, small, fun little project, but I just kept building it. And now it's got over 2,000 teachers using it. And it's in probably 8 different states, 30 or so school districts. And I'm starting to, bring it into a company where I can do it full time. I'm doing it full time. And so it's just a very interesting experience. And I at least like to think it's pretty unique that not that many students are doing it.
I'd have to say it's pretty unique. And, a lot of people may not know this, but we actually met on Twitter. We were, we had just pushed out the Edu Guardians, right? And here comes this username Markify. And and I was like, um, "Who are you?" I think back then it was like maybe you had like 50 followers. And it was like, "Wait, who is this Markify? Is it a name? Is it a tool?" Like, we don't even know. So that's why I say Anthony slash AKA Markify. But I will tell you, this guy slid in and was like created this whiteboard, right? And he was like, "Hey, would love for you guys to throw your Edu Guardians on this whiteboard." And so, all of us Edu Guardians were like, "Yeah, let's do it." And so it's really led to a great relationship between us two. We've met each other at least 3, 4 times in person. Now we're talking, and you're still an Edu Guardian. And so he threw this at us, and we added our Edu Guardian to Markify. And so that really was bold on him, but I think it's been really, really cool to see his growth, and we're all big fans of him. What was it, last month or so, you won this big scholarship or this big award. Tell us a little bit about that. I know it was a competition. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so you have to understand, I didn't want to do entrepreneurship. I didn't want to make a business. When I was going through high school, I was thinking I'm going to be some kind of engineer, maybe a software engineer. But I had no intention of really starting a business. And I think that's one of the reasons why Markify's been so effective is that, a year and a half of its development, over half of its development, there was no intention of monetizing it. There was no intention of how am I going to take over and dominate school districts and make all the money in the world. It was just something that I was building, to help maybe 5 or 6 teachers, my teachers,
Yeah.
to improve their accessibility so that I didn't miss the notes and, later on, have a more fun, engaging class. And so, but anyhow, I'd been building it, and I'd say the biggest realization I had is I love doing this. I love
Yep.
hearing, talking to teachers, getting their feedback. And And it's amazing to talk to a teacher and then tell you how much it benefited their class. But it's even
Yep.
better when you get to talk to students and hear their stories about how some lines of code that you wrote were able to help them get through a class. Um, and so I just
Yep.
love that. And I was thinking, is there a way that I could do this full time? Potentially monetize, but even if it was just me running it, still not this big
Yeah.
enterprise kind of thing, but just where I could focus on it with all my time and put all my effort into it. And so I winded up doing this thing called the EIC, the Entrepreneurship Innovation Center at my school district. It's a thing that they offer essentially all of the schools, all of the high schools, and now they're starting to branch in the middle school even get to
Okay.
come to one building to work on their business. And so I did this thing senior year. I just thought, it's my senior year. Let's have some fun. Let's try it. Let's see
Why
if it's
not?
something I'm interested in. Yeah, exactly. And so I winded up doing it, and it was best decision of my high school career. And they were able,
Love it.
obviously they're pioneering entrepreneurship. They're bringing a new thing into the classroom. And so I think when mainly the director of the program saw Markify, and he had been a teacher slash principal for 25 plus years, and he saw this, he saw the potential in it. He was able to get me into so many doors and get this in so many
Yeah.
staff meetings, not just at my school district, but at other districts, conferences. And I was able to finally take it out and show some people and get the feedback I needed to, build it out and finish it. And so anyway, to the pitch though, what winds up happening is each of these programs, each of these entrepreneurship, they all use a curriculum called the Uncharted Learning Curriculum.
Okay.
And that program lets every school that uses it submit one business to come pitch at their
Okay.
conference. They do their own education conference focused on entrepreneurship. And so I got to go to that conference. And so there's several hundred teams submitted, and I got submitted as top 5. And so I wound up being selected as one of the top 5. And I got to go down and pitch in front of an audience of hundreds of people, and winded up winning 13,000 of the 20,000 that was on the table. And so amazing,
Yeah.
amazing opportunity. And that's really one of the big ways, one of the big reasons I think I can continue Markify. It's definitely
Yeah.
what you would call a yeehaw moment.
Oh, that's a yeehaw moment. I was waiting for that. We
Yeah.
might even ask. I might even ask you another yeehaw moment, later on.
I've
But
got a lot of
um,
yeehaw moments.
I, I know that's why I
How do you
told you
get through
before. I'm
life
like
without a
I could.
yeehaw moment?
You got to have many yeehaw moments.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads me into my next question that we often talk about, and is one of my biggest passions. And if people kind of follow me and hear me talk, I always say when somebody allows me to talk about this subject, I look like that meme where it's like LeBron, like, stomping and pumping his chest. Like I am that meme when somebody asks me to talk about this. But we often talk about how important it is for students to really have the opportunity to be creative and collaborative. And I think you and I both have this like vision and this passion that when we're able to talk about it, we could go on for days. And so I know with Markify specifically, it really pinpoints on collaboration. And I say we don't care what tool you use out there. There's so many great tools, and I often use so many different tools in the classroom. But we have this passion of collaboration and accessibility as well. And I think that I would love for you to hear, and you don't even have to talk about, a tool or your tool or anything, but why do you think that collaboration is such an important aspect that students need to be doing in the classroom? I talk about future ready students. And I think collaboration is just one of those like things that students need to know how to do in that K-12 setting. Why do you think it's so important, or what would be your pitch to a teacher as to why collaboration is so important for those K-12 students?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, and going through school, pretty recently, right?
Yeah.
The big thing is,
Don't make
and
me feel old. Don't make me feel
well,
old.
um, I think the thing is, and I've gone through to like when I was in elementary school, I was in, I'm going to call it less than desirable school district. It
Yeah.
was not, I wouldn't say at the bottom, but it was not anywhere close to the top. It was kind of in the middle. And, I talked to kids, was friends with kids that I didn't know it then, but found out later on when we had moved and left from my parents that they were actually homeless. And I
Yep.
think that that gives a unique insight. But when I was in this school district, there's practically no technology. I think each classroom had one computer, and the teacher had like a slideshow, maybe like a projector, and that was about it. But even the projector was rare. Like only some classrooms had a projector. And that was kind of, I think, when I didn't know it then, like I had no idea back then. And if you told me like a couple years ago, Anthony, you're going to go make an ed tech product and be in hundreds of classrooms, I'd be like, you're talking
Yeah.
out of your mind. You're crazy. But looking back, I think that that elementary school experience is when I started kind of getting into education a little bit,
Yeah.
because like fourth grade, right? There was an electricity unit, right, on electricity. And I've always loved technology. When I was 5 years old, I remember like a repair guy coming to fix the air conditioner. And I was able to point out every single part in that air conditioner and tell him everything. It was like, you fixed the air conditioner thing. And so, but that was because I was exposed to computers. I watched tons of
Yeah.
YouTube videos of, pumps and air conditioners and even things like doorknobs, and really got exposed. But anyway, back to that fourth grade year, my teacher was going to skip the electricity unit. And I thought that that was crazy. I'm like, you're going to skip the best unit on technology and electricity? And so she's like, you teach it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. And so as a fourth grader, I remember putting together boxes of, essentially had wiring inside to let students like connect it and things. And I created
Yep.
all of the curriculum materials. I even created the quiz for that class. And then I used wiring and paper clips to make a contraption to let students grade their quiz by connecting the circuits. And I think that something about that moment really resonated with me, that, and getting a little bit into the question with collaboration, I saw students collaborating on these circuit devices. And I thought that that was
Mhm.
something that really mattered. But anyway, it wouldn't really become anything. I just thought that was a cool thing. But,
Do you
I
ever
go,
notice do you ever notice the facial expressions when you see people collaborate sometimes for the first time?
yep,
I always look at their facial expressions because oftentimes students may not voice that they like this lesson, right?
yep,
But I always look at their facial expressions. And
yep,
when I go into a classroom and I see them collaborate and I say, okay, you two are working together, or the whole class is working on this, they go, "Oh my gosh," a little scared, but then when they start to do it, it's like that yeehaw moment that I always say, like, "This was a yeehaw moment." Their faces just change, their facial expressions, the smile on their face, their eyes light up, and to me, that is, like, why I would tell somebody, "Okay, teachers, when students collaborate and they have a voice and they get to talk to each other and they get to consider each other's ideas and listen and talk, this light bulb goes off and their face just lights up like, as my grandma always say, you're seeing learning take place by looking at their facial expressions. So I think for me, I just love when that collaboration. I love the ideas that come. Um, and so continue on your story. I
well,
sorry, I just
so
had like tan.
no, you're fine. You had a light bulb moment. I think that, well, is the reason that that's important to me, though, is after that, I feel like I was always sitting in the classroom, fifth grade, sixth grade, all the way through high school, trying to think in my head, how could I teach this class? How could I teach better? How could I teach worse, even? And trying to
Yeah,
figure out what is this teacher doing. And I always felt like I had a sense of, trying to think more than just what's being taught, but trying to think, how is it taught and why is what
yeah,
works effective? And I was also, yeah, I'm sure you could guess, but I was always a teacher pet. Um, but
no,
um, but anyway, the big thing is I wound up moving. My parents moved because they wanted to put me in a better school after elementary school. They didn't want to interrupt that, but they wanted to move. And so I wound up going to one of the top school districts in my state. And it was just a whole different realm. I remember when I graduated that 4th grade, we were starting to learn about multiplication. Like we had learned our ones, twos, up to like fives. I
Yep.
come into 5th grade at this new school district. They're learning exponents. Like they had gone all the way past. And so, I had
Yeah.
a lot of catching up to do. But I think the big thing though is as I went through middle school and high school, I never really had that many. There was a handful, but most teachers still just wrote notes up on the board and we copied the notes down. And it
Yep.
was always kind of one-sided. It was always the teacher saying stuff that we're copying. The students weren't
Like more
involved.
teacher-centered classroom,
Exactly.
and you wanted a student-centered classroom. So I
And
feel like this is where your idea took off.
and that's the thing. And I also tell you, when I was in middle school, I hated the ed tech. I just didn't like. I mean, there was a couple of good tools, but
Yeah.
90% of the tools sucked. And it's gotten much better today, but at that time, you could tell it's lazily made. People,
Mhm.
it doesn't work well. Teachers hate it, students hate it. And I remember, like, I actually remember in like 7th grade, I want to say, I was like, and that was when I first started picking up coding. I could make something better than this. Like I could code
Yeah.
something. I didn't know how, but I knew I wanted to. And that's when
You
it
had
winded
that
up coming.
vision.
Exactly. That's when
Yeah.
it winded up coming back sophomore year of high school. And once again, Markify was not going to be collaborative when I started it. It was literally just going to take teacher's board and put it on my screen to see up close and where I can go back if I
Okay.
miss. There was absolutely no collaboration at all. Like it wasn't going to have any tools for students. It wasn't going to let them edit, nothing. But I
Yeah.
wound up having this life-changing experience my junior year. I had
Okay.
this amazing English teacher. Like he
Did
used no
does he
technology.
gets the shout out? He gets a shout
He
out?
gets Mr. Baker. We'll
Okay.
shout him out.
Okay, Mr.
Um,
Baker, shout out to Mr. Baker.
but the crazy thing is, he used no technology at all. Still to
Okay.
this day, he has chalkboards around his room. And I remember one day in class, he wheeled in a old time slide projector where you put the little cards in it. But that made me realize good teaching does not come from the technology. The technology can help, but it's up to the
It's
teacher. And
just a tool.
a great
Yeah.
teacher can teach great without technology. But what I
Yep.
really realized though is he did Socratic seminars. He had students working together. It was like you were saying, with students lighting up. And I think the biggest moment too was you were too busy to be on your phone. I remember trying to pull my phone out several
Yes.
times.
Preach.
And like, students are calling on each other and arguing. And when students are arguing and
Yes.
having this discussion, this rich discussion, they're too busy to be just on a phone, distracted, not paying attention. And to be honest with you, it's fun. And you don't even
I was
realize
I
that you're
was
learning.
just about to say it. I was just about to say I was like,
Yeah.
because learning was fun, because it was a student-centered classroom. It was
Yep.
not a teacher, it wasn't teacher-centered. When learning is fun, creative, and collaborative, they don't get on the phone. And a lot of people go, "Well, Alyssa, like, how'd you guys keep the kids off the phone?" I'm like, because they're engaged,
Yep.
it's fun, they're doing it, they're hands on, that they don't want to get on the phone. So keep on
Exactly.
going, keep on preaching to the choir.
And so
Come on,
I'm
man,
almost
give us
done with
more.
my preach here. I don't know. I just get carried away. But I think that's when I realized though, I was working on Markify kind of on the side, kind of working when I could. And I was just thinking, why can't other English teachers be able to replicate this? I mean, and Mr.
Yep.
Baker, he's been teaching probably 30, 40 years. He is a, long-term teacher. And for 15 years, he had the best scores in the whole school district on the test. And remember that this is like a top school district. And
Yeah.
so I think that highlights how effective his methods are.
Yep.
But I was just thinking, I'm working on Markify and I'm like, why does it just have to be accessibility? Why couldn't a teacher, say
Yes.
another English teacher, not just have students arguing back and forth in a Socratic seminar? Why can't I, as a student, be on my computer and go highlight what I'm talking about and go annotate
Mhm.
and go put a comment down and be, interactive on this document for everyone in the class to
Yeah.
see. And the students that aren't there that day, they see the notes. Students can go back and study. And that's kind of
Yep.
when I had this idea of whole class collaboration and making something where everyone in the class, all the students can work together and collaborate, not just by
No
talking.
matter where they are. Yep. No
Exactly.
matter where they are in the classroom, no matter where they are at home. And I think oftentimes it's okay to have a classroom where you're not paired up right next to each other. You're actually collaborating with somebody across the room, but you're on this collaborative tool and you have to find ways to communicate with that person. And so that kind of leads me into that future ready is that we often collaborate, in today's time in today's workplace through a computer, right?
You have to.
Not
I
all the
mean, you have
time
to
you
collaborate.
have to. Yeah, so, like, that leads to that future ready as to what, you have that vision and that collaboration, and we've talked about future ready students, and I think tools like Markify create opportunities for students to learn that culture of collaboration through the workplace and how it would look like. Um, I know we're closing up. We could talk for days, Anthony. I
Yeah.
mean, we even see each other at
I'm here for
conferences,
8
and we
hours.
could, like, literally we could. I'm gonna end with asking, I know we already talked about one, but let's end with one of your biggest yeehaw moments, and maybe something that a lot of us don't really know about. But what's a yeehaw moment for you?
I mean, once again, you don't.
I know mine was meeting your dad, so I don't know if you can top that. I mean, it was pretty epic for me. I was like,
I'll
I
tell
don't
you.
even I can eat. Yes, please tell him.
Oh, he's gonna
Send the
watch
pop
this though.
cards.
He's gonna watch this. So,
All right. All right. What's
uh,
what's your yeehaw moment? Tell us.
man, that is well. I don't think you do a career like building a tool and building. I mean, Markify is at like probably 23, 24,000 lines of code now. I don't think you get through that without having a daily yeehaw moment. To be honest with you. And so I'm always trying to find ways of celebrating even the smallest thing. Maybe one teacher just made a small reply about Markify. Maybe one teacher DM'd me about something Markify did. Maybe I had a meeting with the teacher. And so I have tons of yeehaw moments, but I think I'll have to
Exactly.
highlight this one. Obviously, the pitch, that's a huge one, but I already said that one. I can't just
Yes.
repeat myself.
Yeah. You can't. Yeah.
And ISTE, there was so many yeehaw moments, like when Melissa Kincaid presented Markify to like 100
Hmm.
people twice.
Oh,
That was not.
she gets a shout out. She's like an hour from me, Melissa.
I
Yeah.
know.
Shout out to Melissa.
Um,
Love it. All right. Keep
so,
going.
but my number one yeehaw moment that I think really highlights, a lot of people ask me, why do I keep going on Markify? Why am I motivated to keep building it? And, I have no plans to like put the whole thing behind like a paywall or anything like that. Money,
Yeah.
my goal in terms of making money is that it's sustainable and that it can pay for the servers. If I do bring on a team of a few people, it can obviously pay them, but not
Yeah.
just making tons of money to be rich. And so a lot of people ask me, why do I do it? And I think that the biggest thing is I was talking with this one teacher, and this was pretty wild, probably 6 months ago, but it's always stuck with me. And the teacher's like, Anthony, can I talk to you about Markify after class? And I'm like, sure, I'll stop by your classroom. And we were just talking one-on-one, and I was panicking because Markify was very early on. She was one of the first teachers to use it. I'm like, she's going to tell me some kind of bug. She's going to tell me that it crashed in the middle of her class. Because she hadn't said it was amazing or bad. She's just like, I need to talk to you about something in Markify. I'm like, what?
It was like when you get called to the principal's office and
Exactly.
you don't know if it's
That's
good or
how it
bad. I feel you.
felt. And so anyway, I go and talk to her. I'm like, well, what broke this time? And she's like, oh no, nothing went wrong. I have this student that's in my class, and she's a genius. And I should mention, she teaches junior year. So this was a junior student. And this student comes in, and she is a genius student. She has, I think she said, a 34 ACT, a 4.7 GPA, really, really smart student. But she is so shy to participate
Mhm.
in the class. and she can't be called on. She can't be put in a group. She doesn't even want to talk to her peer. And she's so scared that she skips class half of the days because, and they found her in a janitor's closet because she would go and hide and not want to be in the class because she was that afraid of being called on. And this teacher tells me that she told the student, hey, just come in Thursday. We're going to try this new tool called Markify. And I think that, and you won't have to talk with anyone, you won't have to work with anyone, but I think it's going to be really special for you. And the student's like, okay, I'll come in. And the student comes to her class and comes in, and you kind of need to understand a little bit what they were doing is they were doing a collaborative study guide. And I think this is one
Okay.
of the best uses of a tool like Markify or any of the other collaboration suites. Essentially, the teacher put a study guide in just like you would if you were printing out like a 30-page packet to give to all the
Yeah.
students, puts that in with all the questions. But essentially, instead of having each student do it on their own on like a big, thick packet, she put each student in the groups of 5, and in
Okay.
each group had one student be the scribe that's on Markify that's answering these questions with the text box. And then she would split up the questions into chunks for each group each day. And so they would
Okay.
read the book for homework, and then they would come in and they would do a section of the study guide. And then each day they would rotate who's the scribe in each group. And so it was like this
Okay.
whole classroom collaborating to make the same study guide where they all help each other. And like one of the days, students actually went and she had them correct other people's answers. And so you get the
Okay.
best, absolute best answers on this study guide, right? Because everyone in the class
Yeah.
is correcting and improving. But anyway, back to the student. She tells the student, sit back there at the back of the room, get on the Markify, and you're going to do this section of questions by yourself. And she was
Okay.
able to give a chunk of that lesson to her to do. And the student went, answered the questions, loved it. And the teacher was able to scroll down on her screen, and all the students were able to look at her questions. And the teacher's like, these are the best questions I've seen all day. Because once again, she was one of the smartest students. And everyone in the
Yeah.
class clapped. And the teacher's like, are
It
you
gave
willing
her a
to
voice.
cut out for a second? But
Oh,
are you
I said
willing
it
to?
gave that student a voice.
Exactly. And that's what
Yeah.
I'm getting to. But
Yeah.
the teacher's like, would you be willing to defend your answer? And the student was willing to get up and defend her answer.
Okay.
And after that class ended, the teacher was telling me one-on-one again.
Yeah.
Teacher's like, she told me that she was willing to work in a group next week. And it was able to not just, and I told this teacher, I'm like, that is not me. That is like 10% Markify. What that is your creative use of creating a lesson, seeing
Yeah.
opportunities, and doing that soon. Like that is not Markify that did that. That is you as a teacher. But it really made me realize, I think, why collaboration is important, why giving
Yep.
this power to the students, because it wasn't just able to give her a voice one time. It was able to actually go and get her not out of her bubble, but it was able to expand her bubble as a student.
Yep.
And I think the thing is that you go back, she wasn't just like this. She didn't get born into this world afraid to be in a group. She
Right.
never really had a teacher force her to, get out of her comfort zone. And
Or
it
felt
just gets
comfortable.
harder and
Yeah.
harder, and harder as you go
Yeah.
on, student harder and harder.
Yep.
And, she's in high school halfway through, and she just was so afraid and scared she skipped class. But something like Markify was able to not just give her a voice, but expand that bubble and make her feel more comfortable. And I can't tell you how many teachers I've talked to that have told me they had students that never raised their hand that are now
Mhm.
participating. And most of the time they're adding the best ideas to that board. And, one teacher told me that he had students come up to them and say, Markify changed my school. And that's something you just don't see with that many ed tech tools. You don't see students
Yeah.
telling teachers how
It
much they
it
love it.
this collaboration really changes a classroom's culture and a school's culture, and I think it gives students a voice that really they haven't had before in certain ways. And I always say a tool is just the tool. It's really the people that use it and the people that really create these lessons, because people they're saying all this conversation of, well, technology is going to replace teachers. It never will. And like you just said, it wasn't because of Markify. It was because of a person. It was because of a teacher identified a way, but to use the tool to enhance that collaboration and that culture. And so I think you could go on and on about the stories that collaboration and Markify has given, opportunities. And I always get cold chills because, it's I always say if you change one person's life, that makes you continue to go and go and go. And so I know what you're doing is truly making a difference. So I know we all have, really enjoyed your journey. We are your biggest, cheerleaders, and it's really, really cool to have you as an EduGuardian, be able to meet you, as an EduGuardian on Twitter, now in person, and we are just excited to see where things are headed. So thanks for joining me today. We're going to go ahead and close it up. Thank you guys for all joining us at the kitchen counter. Stay tuned for more episodes, and remember, great conversations can start at the kitchen counter. We'll see you guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.